Okay, so this video is about uh, Total War Three Kingdoms, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms game that Creative Assembly is creating. Um, Excellent, yay, way to go, guys. Um, and listening to uh, Oakley and Lionheart, they they're not too familiar with the Three Kingdoms period of ancient China, and interestingly enough, I do happen to know. In particular, because I started playing the Romance of the Three Kingdoms back on the Nintendo Entertainment System back in the late '80s, early '90s, and let's see, played the second game on the Super Nintendo, and then later on in '96, '97, '98, I got a PlayStation and was able to play uh, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4 and 6. And later on, when I got a PlayStation 2, I was able to play Romance of the Three Kingdoms 8. They are currently up to 13, which was just released. So it's interesting that right on the heels of that release, that Creative Assembly comes out with this game. KOEI just came out with 13. So, some things about the game. It's an epic poem of some sorts. Oh, and a little tangent. I believe it was a college website of some sort that had a translated version of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and then on the side, you could add notes or read notes other people had left. And I think I'd read up to the point of, it's such a long thing too, but I want to say up to the point of, past the Peach Garden Oath of Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Liu Bei. And it's interesting because the description of Liu Bei is bizarre, and even on YouTube right now I was looking and saw some interesting video depictions of the person. So some ideas and observations of the gameplay. When the games first started, so this is more background on KOEI's Romance of the Three Kingdoms games. But because when the games first started, it was straight strategy and different time periods throughout, from the old Turban to the late, Three Kingdoms. Actually, Warring Three Kingdoms time, and you have generals, all these different officers, and they are the unique personalities of the game. These people have different stats, different sort of abilities, and each warlord, controlling any number of provinces, can assign individuals to certain tasks and positions. So you have if someone's intelligent enough, they can be an advisor, and so that's always something that's interesting about those romance games, is that an advisor would chime in to tell you if things are going a certain way or that. So the interesting thing about what KOEI did was they decided to keep making sequels of the game and to keep refining and adding to the nature of the gameplay. So 1 and 2 were straight strategy. 2 allowed the character or the player to have a bit more control of certain aspects. They stream it's interesting because after the second game, what KOEI did was they seemed to explore between making the game more complicated to making it more visually streamlined and interesting and easy to play and engage in. And then the other, after 3, as I got into 4 and 6, the idea of the KOEI kept changing around, adapting and it got to the point where like you can play, you can create a new lord and fight, and then eventually you can create a character and sort of live in the world. So it's all text based, and you're using interface screens to as your yeah, so basically screens everywhere to choose what you were doing. Um, but the gameplay elements allowed you to basically I'm playing a character and I'm deciding what happens with this character. So improve stats, develop relationships with other characters in the world. Um, Go look for items to help you and improve your stats, um, or even go on clandestine missions and swap sides or gain allies and people to defect to your side. Um, the warfare elements became more complicated. It's interesting because unit wise, there's only so many different kinds of units that the Chinese armies could field. So everybody has the same access to the same units. What's different is the infrastructure and your command of the infrastructure. So what's interesting about ancient Chinese is that they developed cities before other nations across the world, in my opinion, and because they could figure out infrastructure, they figured out literacy, they figured out organization, and what ends up happening is because of the writing system, you have a scribe class, a literary class of people who are the bureaucrats, the people who they're intelligent enough to they can go to a government office and oversee programs and departments and people. Now, the reason why I mention that is, so what's gameplay going to be like for this Total War version? Based off of the recent experience of the Warhammer games, you see strategic agents who they can roam around the game map and act as spies and agents to hurt enemy armies or even kill people, and then you can also assign individuals to positions within the sort of government of your faction. So this can be done for the Three Kingdoms game. The later games of the Three Kingdoms, you get a list of characters you can use and engage in, but depending on their stats, some are to be used as generals, some are to be used as government officers, government agents, and so that's the interesting aspect of, so that's could be something interesting that CA could explore for this version of the game. Recruiting officers, developing resources to create a literary class, and so that way you can start creating a new generation of officers to recruit from. So you can add to your armies, have more government officials to just develop your infrastructure. So yeah, different things like that. It's been a long time coming. So I'm glad to see that Creative Assembly is finally exploring the Chinese side of things, and this also allows for a lot of interesting ideas because the way the Rise of the Three Kingdoms games always played out is it only focused on China and the different factions within China. Later games did feature these provinces outside of the Chinese proper, and those provinces allowed access to different units, so elephants, horsemen, cavalry from the Mongols, things like that. So it will be interesting to see. I mean, because I'm just going based off of what KOEI has done with their games and how they explored the real-time strategy. Well, not real-time, it was turn-based strategy back in those days, but how they explored turn-based strategy and to create a more complex and immersive environment for the player to get involved in. So what I can see happening is you have a couple different gameplay modes you can have. One would be um, have campaign maps, possibly more than one, where the player can say, okay, I'm going to pick this or that faction and go at it. And then another game mode would be either historical or story mode based. And for that, I could see it as um, you could pick a particular character from this, the whole narrative of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Liu Bei, Cao Cao, even guys like how was it, Sun Si and Dong Zhao, and even just there's all sorts of different characters because after some of the history that I am familiar with, there was the Yellow Turban Rebellion that was pacified, but then Dong Zhao ended up taking over, uh, making the Child Emperor a figurehead, and there was an alliance to stop that, and afterwards, just the rest of China just kind of disintegrated and became these fractured little nations of with warlords and armies all over the place. And then just as time went on, things consolidated into these three main factions. So it would be interesting to see, have the player being able to pick one of the different factions, or sort of, three factions ends up, so there could be three different storylines, and as a result, you can play as Liu Bei, and you go through the motions of, Yellow Turban Rebellion, the Dong Zhao issue with the confrontation against Lu Bu, and then unfolding into the point of fighting against Cao Cao and the others. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen, and way to go, Creative Assembly. Looking forward to the great work.